Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 284. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're truly excited to have with us the professionally acclaimed illustrator and highly talented creator of CosmoNatalya, Journey to Planet X, RW Nunley.
Hey, Barney, thanks for having me.
So congratulations are in order. You only have, as of this recording, 2 days left, basically, of your Kickstarter,
Right.
and you've doubled your pledge goal. So
Yeah,
you are now at 4,200. Your goal was 2,000.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I'm like super thrilled, with the performance of the campaign.
Right. And so being your first Kickstarter as well, what would you say is part of the what's part of the formula for having such a great success on your first Kickstarter?
You have to spend a lot of time trying to network and reach out to people and get as many people to share your stuff as you can.
Right.
And once you have your pre-launch links, you have to pay attention to like search engine optimization stuff and make sure that you've propagated your link around the internet. And I mean, it's just a lot of work, I think. Right. And I've learned so much. I feel like I could have done much better, and I think timing is kind of everything too. So
right. And also too, it's a pretty interesting storyline as well. Do you want to tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about what CosmoNatalya is about?
So CosmoNatalya is it's really a sort of a comedy, kind of a spoofy comedy with serious undertones. That is about a Soviet-era cosmonaut who spends some 30-odd years in space traveling to find the planet X that's been discovered in the solar system. But in the time that she's gone, the Soviet Union falls apart, and things change. Other countries discover Planet X, and they send newer, faster spaceships so that when she gets there, an American spaceship, is a modern-day American spacecraft, is also there to meet her on the planet. And of course, there's a space battle, and she winds up on the planet with alien dinosaurs and a tyrannical, kind of a middle management level warlord on the planet. And
this was also co-written by your friend Dean Page, who you also did some previous projects with.
Right. Yeah. Dean Page is somebody that I met during his Return of Jake Sunrise Kickstarter, which is the next issue of that's going to be launching pretty soon also. But we met, working on that, and we started talking about this while we were working on his project. And once that campaign finished, we basically jumped right into this one, and it all came together kind of just super fast.
So I'm kind of curious, because you came up with the idea of this comic, and it's a three issue.
It's intended to be at least 3 parts. Yeah.
Is this kind of also some level of symbolism to your own professional career, because you were gone for a while from the art scene?
I mean,
then you kind of came back, and this is also with like Natalya. Things happened while she was gone, and now she's trying to catch up with everything.
I mean, it's not really an intentional parallel, but I mean, I was really, I'm borderline obsessed with the war in Ukraine, and I'm watching that every single day, and I was, I was really interested, like what if, a Ukrainian-born Soviet-era person were just transplanted from that time to today, how would they feel about how things are going? So, but yeah, I hadn't really made that connection to, her absence in cryosleep versus me being gone away from the art and comics.
How has things changed for you professionally, as almost to the point, the same thing with Natalya, coming at it from a fresh perspective? How much did you have to kind of learn about the indie comic scene?
I'd never really been on Kickstarter before, doing this. So I had no idea that there was this gigantic, indie comic scene on Kickstarter. I think I read somewhere that Kickstarter is actually like the number 2 publisher of comic books in the world now, because of how many books are sold through there. I don't know if that's true, but I remember reading that. And at the time that I put mine up live, I think there were like something like 375 other live comics projects at the same time.
Wow.
Every day that I'm on there, I find stuff that I'd never seen before, and I'm like, how does anybody find anything on here?
Right. And so, what else have you seen? What else have you noticed that has changed since you left? And was it 2008? Is that?
Yeah, it's about 2008.
Yeah.
The digital tools are so much better, and the workflows have changed quite a bit. Back then, I was still inking, some pages. I inked a number of books for Devil's Due, and like that job doesn't really exist anymore. There's just a handful of places that are still doing traditional pencils and inks, and it's so much faster to do it digitally on a tablet. That, I mean, the only cool thing about doing it traditionally is that like you still have those original art pieces that you could sell. You don't get that digitally. I feel like workflow wise, that's probably the biggest change. And the speed of everything is so much faster because you don't have to mail anybody anything. You can email, you can instant message high quality files to people, and nobody has to wait. So
you're the one, Randy, that kind of came up with the idea. You had Dean Page to kind of help you write it. But you mentioned in a previous interview as well that you really wanted to look for a colorist, someone that kind of did that, the colorist for you. How important is it to actually add color to it? And why is it more complicated than most people think? It's not just like coloring pages.
Yeah. So if you're doing a book that you intend to be black and white, like you're going to ink it differently than you would. If you took all the color out of my pages, some of the images would be downright confusing and hard to understand. What exactly it is you're looking at, because you don't have to spot as many blacks because the color is going to do some of that work for you. And so so it's really, I mean, like all steps of the process have to kind of work in tandem with each other, and you have to be in sync. And it's really difficult sometimes to find a colorist that is in sync with your drawings.
Right.
And so I felt like incredibly lucky that we found Kimberly when we did. Yeah, flatting.
So we have some people that have a rough understanding of the different aspects of comic books. Do you want to explain the difference between flats and coloring?
Yeah. So flatting is a technical process where color is applied, but in like solid blocks, and you're using like hard, non-anti-aliased pixels that are like, they're literally like jaggedy, sharp pixels. And the reason that you do that is so that you can use a selection tool in the graphic design software and easily select certain areas and use it as kind of a paint mask to only work in that area.
Right.
And doing that step can save your colorists just an enormous amount of time and let them focus on their shading and their highlights and the really important parts. Masking and selecting is just a really tedious process, and doing flats first is a way to kind of eliminate that step for them.
How did that project management aspect work for those that might be thinking about wanting to work on their own indie comic, and the people they're looking for are not necessarily right next door to them?
Well, I knew that I really wouldn't be able to draw and run the campaign at the same time. So I made sure that my part of the art was basically done. All of the interior pages were complete by the time we went live. Right. And so then it's just like the rest of the team. They're still working, but they don't have to necessarily be directly involved with the campaign. They can focus on just doing their job.
Right.
And you couldn't do them at the same time. You just couldn't.
So how did that work? What kind of formats do you use to talk to them? Do you do it through video, or do you have like a Slack channel, or how does that work where you actually all communicate with each other?
It's usually just via text messaging.
Really?
And just most people I talk to just over the Facebook Messenger app. Okay. And then there's also kind of like a master email chain. So because sometimes you have to send links for big downloads, things like that. And but almost 90% of it was just over the Messenger app. It's easier, more convenient. You can your phone's in your pocket. You can just answer your email whenever.
Right.
And you can access that same conversation from your computer. So
that when you got this Kickstarter launched, that you were kind of planning on losing money on that. Is that true?
That is true. I think that we'd spent something like $2,500 or so out of pocket, and then so the goal was only $2,000
Right.
because I didn't. It's my first campaign. I really didn't know like what kind of response I was going to get, and I'm like, gosh, I'd really rather make like $5,000 or $6,000 on this thing. But I didn't want to put that as the goal because I was like, yeah, like nobody's ever heard of you. You're not going to make that. It's not going to happen. I kind of shopped around at other books and looked at what their goals were, and gosh, you see a lot of people putting like $100, $200 goals out there, and then they go around telling everybody like, yeah, I'm like 4,000% funded. It's like it's cheating a little bit, But yeah, that's how we arrived at the $2,000 goal for that.
Right.
That would have and if we'd only made $2,000, that would have been cool. It would have hedged my losses on it, and we still would have put the book out.
When you created the actual storyline, did you script it out? Did you kind of build the world? How did you actually put it together, the first draft of it?
So the first draft of it was done just really quick. It was inspired by a drawing that I was working on, and then a quick conversation with Dean, and just after that, like the general like bullet point happenings of the story were kind of already in my mind, and I started laying it out like a kind of a 3-act structure for each book. And I very quickly found out while I was doing that I really need somebody else to write this. It's just like writing is more like, you think there's only like 100 words on a comic book page. How hard could it be, right? And then you sit down and start doing it. It's harder than you think. So I wrote Dean into it, and he really helped take this is kind of like basic chunky idea that I had and helped refine it into a comprehensible narrative. Like throughout the process of it, like he kind of wrote the script, and like once he wrote it into a script format, and I started drawing, and then as the drawings went, like I would change stuff in the drawings, and then we would go back and see how that would affect the script, and so it was this very organic back and forth process. It wasn't a rigid like, here's the script, you draw the script thing, which is how I'm used to working, from back in the day.
Right. Now, what about the world building aspect of it? Like, there's alien races. I mean, you're creating a completely different planet. How did that process work?
That was one of the most difficult things. Is like there is this alien race on the planet, but we kind of cheated out a little bit. Instead of building this whole culture on the planet, like we made them visitors also. Like they're stranded on this planet.
Oh, okay.
And there he is. That's our bad guy, the Kravinian, our warlord, and he's got a kind of a menagerie of captured alien girls held captive there.
And so, did you go in deep to actually create like the races and just and all the alien races and just like their how their, what's the word, their biology? And what planets are they from as well? How deep have you gone backwards to help with that world building aspect of the story?
We've actually been kind of intentionally vague on that because because this story is only intended to be 3 issues, so it doesn't really need lots of development. But we didn't want to make choices now that we would have to stick to in case we do more.
Okay.
So we tried really hard to make sure Dean had a lot of freedom to do. And he does have a lot of crazy world building stuff that he wants to flesh out a whole universe out of this book.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure that he had like the freedom to be able to do that after these books are done.
Okay. So talk to us a little bit about also from the business perspective, the contracts. Say, for instance, that we had somebody that, similar situation who would say, I got this idea, but I got to hire a writer for this. So who owns the IP of CosmoNatalya then? So
Dean and I are going to co-own that because we're the 2 people who had to work on this without getting paid.
Yeah.
And so you can't expect somebody just to work for free and then not have anything, right? I had to give Dean some ownership of this.
Right.
And but like once like CosmoNatalya is it's like it's an important project for me, and I've really loved working on it, but it's not really my baby, like I have like other projects that I want to do more than I want to do CosmoNatalya once CosmoNatalya is done. But Dean, like Natalya kind of is turning into his baby. And so, once these 3 books are done, I might be more than happy to kind of just let him take it and run.
Right. Right.
So there are no real contractual agreements. This is, it's like kind of just strictly a gentleman's agreement about the properties, and
Right.
and I always joke with him that well, you're just going to keep me informed before we sell the movie rights to Netflix.
So we talked about the world building aspect of it, but what is this is a science fiction setting.
Uh-huh.
How's the science different? Because you mentioned she went off to Planet X well before everybody else, but then technology is like, so did you and Dean have to like tweak and kind of invent technology, or did you, how specific did you get from the science aspect of the science fiction?
I'm kind of a nerd about like rockets and stuff, and so one of my personal interests. So I spent time actually looking at like what the Vostok engines, from the Apollo era, the Russian spacecraft, like what kind of thrust they had, and how far away people speculate that Planet X might actually be, and how long it would take to get there using that technology, and likewise this, today we have much better rockets. They're much faster, more powerful, and so like this 30-year trip back then, it's like a 9-month trip now.
Right. And so have you been specific though in the comic? Because you're very specific on when it starts. But if somebody reads this comic 10 years from now, are you specific on when the actual time the book takes place in present day? Is it a vague present day, or is it a specific year?
It's a vague present day, or maybe a very near future. And I mean, I think you'll kind of get that from the pages that were being added in the stretch goal. You'd see a lot more of the American astronauts in that, and so you'll be able to pick up the visual cues from them to tell it they're not from way off in the future. They're definitely from right around now. They have their spacesuits are like literally covered in like corporate sponsors and ridiculous things like that. So they look like NASCAR drivers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so you do have, there is a little bit of, as you say, it's supposed to be fun, but there are some serious messages that you said that you put in this.
Yeah. I mean, it can't all be fun and games. There's, when you do a comic book like this, you're like you're just drawing like pretty girls, right? And they're they're half naked or actually naked or whatever, and it's kind of like it's a little bit exploitative, So you kind of want to cue your readers in that you're aware of that, and that these female characters, they are being put into these situations, but they're still like they demand to be treated with respect, and they're going to make sure that anybody who doesn't understands that. So. Maybe I'm not quite sure exactly how to describe that, but in particular with the bad guy and his harem of girls that he's got, it's not human trafficking because they're aliens, but basically it kind of is that.
For those that are going to miss this Kickstarter, where can they find this comic?
So you'll be able to find like this comic is my campaign, it ends in 2 days on July 15, but that comic is going to continue to be available on the Jake Sunrise campaign as an add-on, and so it'll be on there for another month. And after that, like I should have a personal website built and functioning, and because we want to be able to have that book and other books for sale off of that, but I don't have a personal website up yet. But by the time those 2 campaigns end, I will.
Right.
And you'll easily be able to find that through my social media.
How much has the story changed from your initial idea? Because you said you already kind of had some arcs planned out. Other than Dean bringing in his writing expertise, has there been some very specific character arcs or story arcs that you're like, wow, that's a great idea? Throw that in.
Yeah. The first issue is largely unchanged from the original concept, but like once the second issue starts, it was like we already kind of started working, on that book when Dean and I really kind of formalized our workflow together. So that was pretty much already set in stone. But the next 2 books, he was able to kind of just take them and just wildly deviate, from the original. And he's added like whole new races and characters into it. Things have changed a lot. And I think it's it's really important for when you're in that kind of partnership, that you have to have flexibility, and you have to let like your creative partner, you have to let them outside to play too, and don't be a control freak, which I have a tendency to do.
The comic, it seems as though it's like a modern interpretation of some of the old Golden Age comics of like Planet Comics and some of
Oh
those.
yeah, I'm a big fan of. Years ago, I worked at an art supply store, and this guy came in, and this Roger Hill was his name, and he wrote books about old Golden Age comic, like guys like Wallace Wood from. He did a bunch of EC comics, Weird Science comics, things like that. And I had some Photoshop skills back then, and he asked me to restore some of this old art for him because he was writing a book. And so yeah, I took these old yellow crumpled up drawings and like cleaned them up in Photoshop for him. And that's gave me like a really tremendous introduction to some of this Golden Age comic stuff. And so I've been into that for a long time.
What were some of your other inspirations as you came up with a story arc, other than some Golden Age comics? What were some of the other inspirations for the story?
There's things like I'm a big fan of the movies, like the spoof movies like Airplane or The Naked Gun, and I really love that kind of humor and comedy. So there's the book's just full of like sight gags and Easter eggs about that, and just everything that I could think of that was fun. I really wanted this comic to be a lot of fun, and so there's a lot of that's Calvin and Hobbes spaceman spiff kind of like narrative voice in that emerges throughout the book. And I just love all that stuff, and I feel like there's a lot of people that do, and when they read it, they're gonna find all of these little hidden gems.
So that was one of the things that connecting with Dean about. So Dean kind of has the same humor as you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does, and he has a crazy memory for all these wonderful things that I'd completely forgotten about. Was always sending me, like pictures of old toys, like, hey, you remember these? And I'm like, oh my God, Silverhawks! I hadn't thought about that in years.
And so, as you said, so how this came out, this is going to be this Kickstarter. You're going to have everything is going to be available according to your Kickstarter. July 20th, the digital stuff is going to be available in July. And for the physical copies, the physical stuff is going to be available August.
Yeah, the with the additional 6 pages from the stretch goal, we might barely miss that. Like our July digital PDF might be the first week of August digital PDF. Okay. Just because we are adding pages, and we brought back the original colorist for the new pages, but she's committed to other jobs right now, so she's trying to squeeze them in. And but she's doing a great job about being on top of it and getting them done quickly. But it might delay us just a little bit, but only because we're doing extra. I was like, some of the things like the patches and the coins, I'm not personally overseeing the manufacture of those items, so I wanted to make sure that there was plenty of time. I didn't want to overpromise on delivery on that stuff.
Right. And that was my next question, like with like the mini bust and some, and like the mission patches and the coins. How much of this were things that you felt your readers wanted, or how many of these are things like you actually wanted and you're just going to offer them to everybody else because you love that idea?
Well, I wanted the challenge coin for myself, and I just think they're really neat things to have, and I thought if I could make like a mission challenge coin, like I'll bet people would like those. I bet people would buy a couple, and they're actually quite expensive to make, so they're actually being sold on the campaign at cost. It's not a very good fundraising device at all. But it is kind of helping me subsidize the one that I want for myself. So,
right, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what were some of the surprises of the things that you put on your tiers that seem to have really taken off?
The sketches have proved really popular. I got a lot of good feedback from people saying like how much they like the fact that they could have like this kind of anything sketch done. They can pick their characters or whatever. And I got a few emails from backers that stated in particular, I was like, this is really cool that you're doing this, because most people won't give us that. You'll get a sketch, but you don't get to pick sometimes, or the sketches are already done. But I'm still new, so I still have some reputation building to do amongst like those backers.
What's your timeline that you see happening with issues 2 and issues 3 then?
The timeline of those is we're not going to jump straight into issue number 2 because I don't want to. I'm not trying to do back-to-back campaigns or anything. I feel like people will get burned out on it. I have other projects, with other creators that I'm working on. I'm going to be doing a book called Orchid with David Sandoval, and I'll be working on that towards over the end of the year. So, I'll probably start working on number 2 in probably either late in the fall or early 2024.
Okay.
And but in the meantime, I'll be helping Dean out with this Jake Sunrise book. And I have a number of other just like art commission jobs I got to get through. Plus, I have all these sketches to do now from this campaign, so it's going to keep me busy for a while.
So, if people want to learn more about you, Randy, where's the best place they could go to?
Middle-aged, I guess. So Facebook is kind of where you're going to find me. I do have a presence on Instagram, but if you can find me on Facebook and direct message me just about any time. I'm almost always on there.
Will there be an option to kind of pre-order it post Kickstarter?
That was the only thing that we could think of immediately was to get it onto the other campaign, and we're still working out how how exactly we're going to make it available. I don't know if we're going to make it put it on Amazon, or it will definitely be on a dedicated website, of our own soon. But I don't have any details to share with anybody on that just yet.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Well, Randy, this has been great. I've been looking forward to talking to you. I'm so happy we're able to sit down and just talk about the history of the book and how it came about.
I was afraid I'd missed you. I'm glad I didn't.
Right. Is there any? Oh, hang on. Let me timestamp this, Randy. This is live. So what I'll do is after the fact, this is going to be super smooth after there. People be thinking, "Wow, Barney's asking them one question after the other." So it's the power of editing. See, Randy, that's what it is. Yeah. So in order for this to also to kind of be an evergreen, an evergreen interview,